Hi, this is Bill from BCUMC, and this is the Gospel of John study. And we are looking this week, which is week 11, at John chapter 20. And today we're picking up with verse 24. So let's get started. One of the 12 disciples, Thomas, nicknamed the Twin, was not with the others when Jesus came. They told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he replied, "I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands and put my fingers into them, and place my hands into the wound inside his side." 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. "Peace be with you," he said. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and look at my hands. Put your hand into the wound in my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe." "My Lord and my God," Thomas exclaimed. Then Jesus told him, "You believe because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me." All right, I'm going to pick up now in the text by Ben Witherington III, beginning on page 160. As it turns out, not all of the 11 disciples had been present at the first appearance of Jesus on Easter Sunday night. Thomas had been elsewhere, and so he missed out on the appearance. And when the male disciples told him about it, he was as stubborn as the 10 had been when Mary Magdalene had reported and not been believed that Jesus had appeared to her. Thomas says not only must he see Jesus, he must see his wound marks. And not only must he see his wound marks, he must put his fingers into his hands and side. And here is where I say Thomas is not depicted as doubting Thomas, but rather he is depicted as unbelieving Thomas. That is exactly what Jesus will say to him. Stop disbelieving and believe. Thomas is not a person plagued with doubt or wavering betwixt and between. He simply doesn't believe Jesus has risen from the dead. When Jesus appears once more in the same room, in the same fashion, with the same greeting, the only real difference is that Thomas is present. And so Jesus invites Thomas to make good on his statement and touch the healed wounds. The story does not say in the end he did so, or that he needed to do so. Jesus exhorts himself to believe. And finally, we get what is, ironically, the first full confession, the first Christian confession that matches up with the prologue and proclaims Jesus, my Lord and my God. It may well be of importance that at about the time this gospel was put together, there was an emperor who demanded to be recognized as our Lord and our God. If this story is meant to be relevant to that situation, then it would be claiming that the emperor cult is worshiping the wrong person as Lord and God. That would be the risen Jesus. The story rounds off with Jesus' statement to Thomas, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." This last pronouncement is important. It would have been of special relevance to the audience of the gospel in the AD 90s. Most, if not all of them, had never seen Jesus, either during his ministry or as the risen Jesus, and yet they had believed in him. And of course, this was also true of all who are writing or reading this. It is certainly one of the major messages of this wonderful gospel, that believing leads to seeing, but not only so. Those who believe without seeing are more blessed, have a stronger faith. Sometimes we may think, if I could have only been one of Jesus' original disciples and seen him in the flesh, then I might have a stronger faith. As it turns out, Jesus suggests this is not necessarily true. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for. And if you don't hope for what you already have right in front of you. All right, so let's look at the reflection questions. What do you make of the characterization of Thomas in this gospel, who really doesn't figure in the synoptics? Why do you think we've tended to call him Doubting Thomas when he flatly refused to believe without what he took to be proof? In what sense is Thomas's confession the first real post-Easter Christian confession? All right. Tune in tomorrow as we will continue in John chapter 20, and we'll pick up at verse 30. See you tomorrow.